Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to do an unboxing video of the URSA Mini 4K. Just kidding. We're actually going to be talking about the 4.6K versus the 4K. This is my final review of the two cameras. I've been using the 4K for about 9 months and the 4.6K for about 6. So I've had these cameras a good amount of time to be able to really run them through their paces. The new update came out, so finally I feel like both cameras are out of beta mode. The first number one thing between the 4.6K and the 4K is the dynamic range. And that to me is the number one selling point for the 4.6K. You'll be so happy when you get into post and you start working with 15 stops of dynamic range. And then you go and work with this camera again, the 4K, with only 12 stops. You'll be tearing your hair out. You'll be like, why can't this just give me more dynamic range? I just want more dynamic range. That's what happened to me. The other thing that the 4.6K does over the 4K is gives you so many more options as far as codecs go. With the 4K, you have RAW, ProRes, and they still haven't quite updated to DNxHR, but the option's there eventually. Now, when you shoot ProRes, you have a bunch of different codecs, but as far as sizing goes, you either have Ultra HD or you have HD. And then RAW, you can shoot lossless, 3:1, 4:1, but you can only shoot 4K. What? See, that's where the 4.6K really kicks its trash, because you can shoot 1080 RAW lossless on the 4.6K. I mean, that may sound really stupid. Like, I got a 4.6K camera, I want to shoot highest ever. Well, if you're outputting at 1080, say you're doing a project that you really want to have the flexibility in post to be using RAW, and you know the client is only going to have 1080 anyway, you can save so much space by shooting 1080 RAW versus shooting 4.6K RAW. It's just like 4.6K, it's like what, 11 minutes, and then your entire time is just oh, it's all gone. So that to me is a huge selling point for the 4.6K over the 4K URSA Mini. Just a side note, when you're shooting on the 4.6K RAW, if you don't shoot 4.6K, you're not utilizing the entire sensor. You'll notice there's a little line as you switch between to other resolutions that it says windowed, and it windows it down to about the 4K, so it just punches in just a tiny bit. So it's not a huge difference, but just something to note. In ProRes, it doesn't do that at all. You can shoot 1080, it doesn't window the sensor at all, unless you tell it to. The other great thing is actually shooting multiple different sizes. There's 4.6K, there's 4K 16:9, they even have a 3K anamorphic where it de-squeezes your lens, which I've never shot with an anamorphic lens, unfortunately. I'm not a level 12 filmmaker where you get those abilities to be able to do that. I just gotta get powered up. The other great thing is you can shoot 2K RAW 120 frames a second. And that's without doing the dual card mode. And that's lossless. So I shot this rollerblader doing tricks, 2K RAW, 120 frames a second, and I didn't have any drop frames. It was awesome. So another noticeable difference between the 4K and the 4.6K is sensor size. The 4.6K has just a slightly bigger sensor, and I didn't think when I first saw it, I was like, oh yeah, it's just a tiny bit bigger. They're still Super 35, but actually your field of view is quite a bit bigger. It's enough to be noticeable, and actually once you go back to the 4K, you're like, oh, I wish I had a little, just a little bit wider, because you get used to it. Another thing is the 4.6K is better in low light, but it's really not that much better. The 4K just is terrible in low light. Like, it's awful. The 400 ISO, even pumping it to 800, the 4K sucks in low light, really bad. Okay, so the other one that people complain about is global shutter on the 4K versus rolling shutter on the 4.6K. I had the same concern. I was really concerned of like the jello effect from a DSLR, and I was like, oh great. It's actually not bad. It's not DSLR grade rolling shutter. It's actually not that noticeable. Even doing handheld, it's really not that noticeable until you get on like, you know, an 85 or 100 or, you know, 200 millimeter lens that you really start noticing the jello effect. But for the most part, it's really not that bad. I mean, I've thrown it on a movie. I've done a lot of handheld stuff, a lot of documentary style handheld. I haven't noticed much of anything as far as the rolling shutter is concerned. Now with the 4K, yes, you have global shutter and it's fantastic. You can whip this thing any way you want, and it's not gonna roll. The shutter's not gonna roll. I wouldn't recommend doing camera shaking syndrome with your camera. It could cause, you know, sensor damage or something. I made that up. I'm kidding. Okay, so then another thing that I think is interesting to note is the 4K batteries last much longer on it. It's probably a half hour to an hour longer. As far as like the Anton Bauer, I get about 2.5 hours on the 4.6K, and I get about 3.5 hours on the 4K with the same battery. They're both 90 watt Anton Bauer batteries. It was a little frustrating when I got the 4.6K and I was like, I'm eating through batteries so much faster. And then I realized, oh, like the camera actually consumes more power. So that's just one thing to note. The 4K will last longer on less battery. It doesn't consume as much power. So now I want to talk about the usability of these cameras. Both cameras have the same shape, ergonomics. You can't even tell the two cameras apart except for the fact that one says very tiny on the top 4K and the other says 4.6K. It's kind of frustrating because I have both cameras and sometimes I get confused on which one's which until I start shooting with it, and then I'm like, this one's obviously the 4K, or this one's obviously the 4.6K. Anyway, I don't actually do that. So I've been shooting a lot of doc style stuff, and this camera definitely is not a documentary style camera, in my opinion. Some people may love it for doc. It gives you gorgeous images, it's amazing for that, but it's so cumbersome to be carrying around everywhere. When you're doing run and gun, and you're going to a lot of different locations, and you're trying to be low impact, this draws attention to itself, and it's heavy. But when you're shooting stuff like narrative, or commercials, this thing is awesome. That's in a studio, that you're lighting, that you're composing your shots very carefully. It's not run and gun, it's very thought out, it's storyboarded, you know, whatever it may be. This camera is friggin' awesome. And then handheld with this camera is, I still really enjoy the shoulder rig. And then a lot of people say they really like the handheld on the side with the handle on the side. I tried it for a bit, and I just got exhausted. I mean, this camera just is not light to be like, it just doesn't, it's just felt weird. I would much rather shoot by the handle up here and kind of undersling it like so. It was much easier than having this weight like pull down on your hand. So all in all, I'm super happy with this camera. For the price, you are getting a stellar camera. And you know, it's up to you. The 4K really isn't a bad camera. Now, I know I've said a lot of things that like, oh, the 4K doesn't do low lights. Like, there's a lot of issues with the 4K is a fantastic camera, and it's only $3,000 for just the camera, and then obviously you need to add the other stuff on. So like, for about $5,000, you have a stellar camera. That's with all the accessories and all that jazz. Now you add an extra $2,000 to that, and you have the 4.6K, which is, in my opinion, just dominates. It's just a much better camera. But if you don't have the budget, totally makes sense. Like, the 4K is a good camera. It gives you beautiful images. The dynamic range is still 12 stops, which is a lot. It still does 120 frames a second at 1080, and it's a good camera. It really is. I hope this was helpful. I hope this informs you. I know I've done a lot of reviews on these cameras. They're both fantastic cameras for the price. Are they an end-all be-all camera? No, they're not like the best camera in the world, but for the price, you're getting some serious great bang for your buck. If you have any questions, write them in the comments below. And again, be sure to subscribe to check out more videos like this. And thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate you.